All right, good morning, everyone. Andrew Douglas in the Action News 5 digital desk. Let's talk about the heat and some of the effects if we have various medical conditions. I'm joined now by Tosha Jackson. She's the Chief Nursing Officer at Methodist South. Thanks so much for joining us. Let's talk about some of the concerns and some of the dangers out there when you have outages that are that widespread, because right now there's about 100,000 homes and businesses without power, but also the prolonged effect of that, because it sounds like there's going to be some people that are going to be out of power for a significant time. What are you concerned about, Ms. Jackson?
Good morning. Thank you for having me on this morning. It is very concerning, especially if you have a medical condition that you don't have power. A lot of people have devices in their homes. My parents is one of them. They have medical devices in their home that they need power for in order to do day-to-day things. Now, I must say, call 911 if you're in any danger or any situation where you cannot get the medical help or use your medical device as needed. But there are other things you can do to actually help with that. Just go ahead and make sure you have plenty of supplies. I think we're predicting it may be a couple of days before the power may be restored in some areas. So just go ahead and call that medical company and get any supplies you may need that may last you a few days. But again, if there's a medical emergency, our emergency rooms are capable of handling any of the needs that you have. Go ahead and call 911 if you feel like that you cannot survive in this heat. It's going to be pretty hot, and some of our homes will heat up pretty quickly. So let's just make sure we are aware of our medical conditions first, and then we can take care of everything else that we need to take care of in the household.
No question. So I know that in these type of situations, and we've had several over the last few years, unfortunately, what do you see the most coming into your hospital? Do you see people with perhaps some breathing issues? Are there other dangers, risks involved? What do you see the most when power is out for a significant period of time?
In our community, just here, especially in the Memphis and surrounding area, we unfortunately see frequent power outages. Heat exhaustion this time of year is probably our number one thing that we see. A lot of people do not realize that their homes are hot. It takes someone else to walk in and the heat to hit them in the face before they realize their home is hot. So if the elderly, please check on them, check on your neighbors, your church members, because a lot of times they do not feel heat like we feel heat. So heat exhaustion is probably the number one thing that we're seeing. As you stated, a lot of those patients that can't breathe, or their oxygen levels or their oxygen tanks begin to start to run low and they can't get out to go get their tanks filled. And we do not want anybody to be in a position where they do not have enough oxygen to last, through a couple of days. So please reach out to the emergency rooms. Now, you don't typically see those heart attacks, strokes, things like that, because that is common in everyday to day, but just those related to heat, you particularly see heat exhaustion and maybe low oxygen levels.
I see. Okay, yeah, because I would think that if some people are out for a significant period of time, those oxygen levels and those people that are on breathing medications or just breathing systems overall, they're going to need to go somewhere, perhaps your emergency room, in order to get the kind of help that they need. You mentioned heat exhaustion, probably the number one thing. I know that we've talked in the past to many different people about heat stroke. That's also a very dangerous thing. And I know that later this week we're supposed to get back in the triple-digit heat, something we saw yesterday before the storms. What else are you concerned about later today and this week?
Yeah, we want to make sure people are drinking enough water. In our Southern Belt, we love sweet tea, but sometimes the added caffeine, sometimes with the extra coffee, when the added caffeine can cause more dehydration statuses. Alcohol, of course, should be avoided during this time. And simply just having a glass of water, keeping water nearby, hydrating and staying hydrated is the most important advice any medical expert can give during this time. And hopefully, even with the electricity out, everyone still have access to water. If not, bottled water is an option. If you don't have access to water, we do have our Methodist facilities at every location, any part of town. You have Methodist South, Methodist North University, as well as Germantown, as well as Alabama Children's Hospital and the Olive Branch Hospital, where you can go even if you just need water. We'll be available to help supply those needs to the community.
So you mentioned heat exhaustion, hydration. We talked about breathing, and a lot of it is focused on some of the most vulnerable in our community. Of course, the elderly. But what about children? What are some of the concerns that we have with children, particularly small ones, maybe infants or little babies?
Yeah, a lot of times children may not be as affected as adults just because they are pretty much active. They are pretty much drinkers of milk, water all the time. It's their main substance. So a lot of times children, unless they're just running constantly in the heat. Now, mind you, you do want to make sure they stay cool. You want to make sure they do not overheat, especially our little babies. We don't want to leave them in hot cars. We don't want to leave them behind. Make sure we're checking for them if we are going to be in cars, because this time of year, we know a car can heat up very quickly, and we don't want to leave our children in cars. But in the home, you can pretty much open windows, but keep the blinds closed, keep any drapes, curtains, or anything like that closed. Yes, you still want to give popsicles or anything like that the kids may have to help hydrate. They may not dehydrate as quickly as your elderly who are not drinking enough fluids.
Okay, well, listen, Tosha Jackson, we really appreciate you, Chief Nursing Officer, Methodist South Hospital. Thanks so much for your insight. We really appreciate it this morning.
Thank you for having me. Have a good day.
Yeah.